Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, World Media here, and is the United States declaring war on Venezuela? It appears that that is exactly the case as we see preparations made for U.S. forces to go on the ground in Venezuela, according to Trump. Now, this is incredibly dangerous because we have to understand what a war, a ground war in the Americas would look like. It's happened before. And of course, it will escalate things between the issues of mass migration as well as obviously proxy, false flags, etc. Trump calls off diplomacy with Maduro as secret DOJ approved kill list revealed. This is something that they're trying to push forward to eliminate Maduro. Maduro is a terrible person. You know, we've been talking about Maduro for a long time and Venezuela for a long time. If you go back on our old channel on YouTube, which I don't suggest people subscribe to, I suggest people subscribe on Rumble and BitChute, but you'll see videos going back a decade on the issue of Venezuela. Many of them. I've been banned from the country by Maduro. I'm not allowed to step foot inside of Venezuela. Here's a video from 9 years ago, 9.5, almost 10 years ago, January 30th, 2016, where we go into it. Of course, we have videos like this one called Has Venezuela Become the World's Largest Prison from 8 years ago, March 14th, 2017. Look, we have been talking about this for a long time. However, this is another step in another wrong direction. Who actually runs the cartels in Venezuela? What does the CIA have to do with it? What does the Mossad have to do with it? Why exactly are they working so hard to go after the country with, well, the most oil? We're going to go into that and more today because I find it extraordinarily important for where we go next as individuals within the confines of this new world order. But before we do, I urge people to go and check those links below and help support us if you can, because we need your help absolutely facing a lot of problems right now. And you guys are the only thing that helps keep us alive. We are consistent. We refuse to bow to sides. We've turned down $1 million contracts to continue to tell the truth because we won't read off a teleprompter. But you guys are the only thing that can keep us up and running. So we have gogetfunding.com, Patreon, and Subscribestar. Patreon, Subscribestar, and exit at World Alt Media. You will get exclusive content. As well, if you pledge $4.99 a month or more, there's a Bitcoin address that you can scan on the screen here or check out in the description of the video, as well as a Cointree link with a bunch of different cryptocurrencies that you could donate in, including privacy coins. We have a Teespring store with a bunch of merchandise that helps support us while getting good messages out on the street as well. And of course, we urge people to go and subscribe on BitChute and Rumble at World Alternative Media. Of course, if you're watching on band.video or YouTube, first of all, we'll be off of YouTube again very soon, I'm sure. And then band.video is going down right away. So I urge people to help support us on these other platforms. Hit that like button, share on social media, hit the notification bell, and hit subscribe if you have not yet already. Now, anyway, let's get into this. So this is from shtfplan.com. It says, Trump, U.S. forces could soon be on the ground in Venezuela. This is insane news. President Donald Trump has suggested that the United States forces could soon be on the ground in Venezuela. The U.S. ruling class could quickly escalate a brewing conflict from sea to land operations, expanding what the ruler has called a war on terrorist drug cartels. While speaking at a Navy anniversary ceremony in Norfolk, Virginia, Trump said American forces had struck another vessel off Venezuela's coast, allegedly carrying narcotics. And I quote, in recent weeks, the Navy has supported our mission to blow the cartel terrorists the hell out of the water. We did another one last night. Now we just can't find any, he said. They're not coming in by sea anymore. So now we'll have to start looking about the land because they'll be forced to go by land. Now, who armed and funded these cartels in the first place, specifically Tren de Aragua, which is the one that, of course, they claim took over apartment buildings in Colorado and places like that in the last year or so, which again, there's obviously evidence that they did, but who are they? Who runs them? Who brought them there in the first place? Is it bad to go after narco terrorists and mass murder people and of course, traffic children? Of course, it's not bad to do that. However, who armed and funded these people in the first place? And you don't get any answers because, well, the question is kind of redundant. We know who armed and funded them in the first place. We know it's a CIA. We know it's the Israeli government. We know also that Maduro, who, of course, again, is a dictator, who is a bad person, who is a socialist pushing towards communism. Of course, he's a terrible person, but and he bankrupted the country, printed a huge amount of money, caused massive inflation. I get that. But we also know that he has been speaking out a lot as of the last few years against Israel and Zionism and these kinds of things. I think it goes without saying, as he said himself, that there is evidence that Mossad has been infiltrating Venezuela. Now, I want to also point out that, again, world's biggest oil country, beautiful place. I know a countless amount of Venezuelans, and you know, I live in Mexico. I talk to Venezuelans all the time, and you know, there's some nuance in what they believe, but most of them escaped Venezuela because of persecution, because of hyperinflation, because of poverty, because of these different things. And if you talk to most of them, it's like they don't fall for the US outlook, just like they don't fall for Maduro's outlook or Chavez's outlook. At the end of the day, they'll acknowledge the fact that the CIA has been trying to infiltrate Venezuela and plant their own leaders, people like Juan Guaido in the past. And simultaneously, Maduro has been subjecting people to hell and doing things like the rabbit plan, where he gave every family a rabbit to raise to eat. And then kids just ended up keeping them as pets. Or when he went on television saying no one's starving in Venezuela while his fat ass eats a burrito on television and laughs. Horrible. Can't stand the guy. And we have to also put a lot of blame on Hugo Chavez, because, of course, Chavez was the person who had the outlook to have Maduro be the next guy in. He, of course, Maduro worked under Chavez, and of course, Chavez brought in a lot of policies that he died before seeing turn into these travesties, which are, this is centralized government that leads to massive depressions and hyperinflation. So again, this needs to be understood. There's nuance to the issue. Venezuela, the government, not good. The CIA trying to infiltrate the government and take it over by proxy, also not good. It shouldn't be rocket science, but of course, these days, everything has to be left, right, this side, that side, instead of looking at the, you know, macro scale of these issues, which is, of course, far deeper. Now, this idea of militarizing law enforcement, bringing in this stuff in the United States, it's all a Trojan horse for, you know, the overall authoritarian takeover and technocracy, whether it's through Trump or whether it would have been through Biden, or whether it was, and it was through Obama, whether it was, and it was through Bush, you know, with the Patriot Act and more, and NDAA. These things are becoming more and more dangerous, but people are normalized to it. And in fact, in many cases, people who would usually disagree with it agree with the ideas, because they say, hey, we have so much lack of law and order in the country. We have so much violence, crime. We need to do something about it. I agree, but they created the problem in the first place to come in with a solution that creates more problems later on down the line. Trump calls off diplomacy with Maduro, a secret DOJ approved kill list revealed. That's right. U.S. is working on strategy to eliminate Maduro. The Trump administration is working on a strategy to eliminate Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, according to a report from Politico's National Security Daily. Since when is it okay for the U.S. to assassinate world leaders? Well, they've been doing it for a long time, as has Israel. But nonetheless, it's okay when they do it, but not okay when the other guys do it. I say it's bad when anyone does it, and I think it's probably best to avoid that. And instead of falling for the same old tricks of maybe the state will save us from the state, maybe instead we should withdraw from that and start, you know, building ourselves individually as this digital ID framework comes in. But nonetheless, says the report focused on U.S. Special Envoy Rick Grenell, who was recently instructed to halt his diplomatic efforts with the Venezuelan government. Sources told NatSec Daily that they didn't think the move meant Grenell was on the outs, but rather that the U.S. was now focused on escalating its efforts to oust Maduro. And I quote, the president is serious. No more mixed messages, no more excuses. A person familiar with the Trump administration's thinking, rather, told NatSec Daily. There's now a coherent whole of government strategy to eliminate Cartel de los Soles and its leader. The Cartel de los Soles is a term used to describe a network of Venezuelan government officials allegedly involved in drug trafficking. The group does not actually exist as an organization, but the U.S. has declared it a terrorist group and has claimed Maduro is its leader. Now, when you declare something a terrorist group, it allows them to do airstrikes on it. It allows them to do warrantless arrests and murders and killings. So they have recently done similar things with Antifa in the United States, and as horrible as Antifa is, and I can't stand them, and they've tried to ruin my life and dox me and destroyed my vehicle and came after me. They've violently attacked me. As much as I don't like them, we have a slippery slope when we call people terrorist organizations, because it allows people that are just slightly associated to end up in prison, warrantless arrests, and of course, dead. Again, we have to be consistent with the Trojan horses. We have to see what's happening, okay? It's easy to feel nice about something and not understand the whole breadth of its weight. Maduro and other Venezuelan officials have strongly denied the U.S. allegations, pointing to data that shows the majority of the cocaine that is produced in Colombia doesn't go through Venezuela. And I would guarantee you that the U.S. CIA has something to do with that drug production. President Trump has framed the military campaign in the region, which has involved bombing at least 4 boats as a response to overdose deaths in the U.S. due to fentanyl. But fentanyl isn't produced in Venezuela, and it does not go through the country on its way to the U.S. Of course, it's made in Wuhan, China. Interesting information. They're not all of it, but a lot of it is. It's shipped over often through Colombia or through Mexico, from the north of Mexico, that is. And the CIA is the one that's doing it, and it's quite obvious. Why would drug dealers want to kill their own customers? There's so many horrible things that are happening with fentanyl right now, and I've known multiple people who've died from it, and I've seen a guy die. I was doing karaoke a couple of years ago, and not to laugh at the death, but I was just the fact that I'm standing there doing karaoke. It was such a silly situation, and this guy who was in his 60s did a line of cocaine in the bathroom, thought it was cocaine anyway, came out, was standing there listening to the music, and just tipped over and died while I was in the middle of a song. This is something that is becoming an absolute epidemic, but it's by design, and there's no way that the government isn't directly involved in it. So to use this as an excuse, use the death of young people especially as an excuse to mass murder potentially hundreds of thousands of people, which this could turn into, is to me despicable. Now, again, it's problem, reaction, solution, repeat for eternity, the Hegelian dialectic, as they say, that continues this agenda over and over again. They obviously are creating the problems they're then going to try and stop. President Trump deploys F-35 fighter jets to Puerto Rico to target drug cartels. Of course, we know there's a lot of Venezuelans in Puerto Rico. There's also a lot of Venezuelans doing military drills to simulate fighting with the United States. Again, this is something we predicted a long time ago, and it was eventually going to end in war. And I mean, our videos from a decade ago went into this. And Hegseth has now announced the 4th deadly strike on narco-terrorist boat off of Venezuela. And we have Rand Paul back in September, about a month ago. Rand Paul fumes at J.D. Vance over support of strike on drug boat. And as Nick Sortor, who I can't stand, says, J.D. Vance woke up and shows violence against Brian Krasenstein today. J.D. Vance says, killing cartel members who poison our fellow citizens is the highest and best use of our military. It's just the same as you are with the terrorists if you don't support going to Afghanistan and Iraq. It's all that same, lingo. It's bullshit. Brian Krasenstein, who I also can't stand, he says, killing the citizens of another nation who are civilians without any due process is called a war crime. And J.D. Vance responded, I don't give a shit what you call it. Now, Rand Paul says, J.D., I don't give a shit. Vance says killing people he accuses of a crime is the highest and best use of the military. Did he ever read To Kill a Mockingbird? Did he ever wonder what might happen if the accused were immediately executed without trial or representation? Just loading the Twitter post here. What a despicable and thoughtless sentiment it is to glorify killing someone without a trial, says Rand Paul. But all these people that used to be, very pro-libertarian viewpoint are suddenly just falling into the trap of this because they think, oh yeah, the United States is strong again. Strong according to who, and who do they work for, and who is subverting the nation, my friends, and who gets off on chaos in other regions around the world and causes a collapse of those places in order to then help take them over further. Well, there's a country in the Middle East that loves to do that. Trump declares armed conflict with cartels. Again, they're doing this in Mexico. I've predicted for a while, I think going back to about 2022, that one of the next big steps would be that the government, whether it be under Biden or Trump, would eventually go to war with Mexico under the guise of, first of all, they'd say that the guns that are in Mexico came from Russia or China or Iran, and frame them for that when it's clear that the guns are from the United States. And then say they work with Russia and China because they have military parades in places like Monterey, which they've been doing for a long time. And they'll say, oh, they're planting IEDs on the border, which they've already then started to claim. And then they declare the groups terrorist groups, and then they order strikes, which Hegseth and Trump have already said that they could commit strikes at any time on Mexican populations. And this has led to Claudia Sheinbaum in Mexico going along with a lot of the Trump policies, which she claims she's not, but she is. And we see a lot of infighting and the push to cause chaos between citizens and cartel. Which again, I'm not going to defend the cartel, but I'm also not going to attack them either, because at the same time, and people say, oh yeah, it's easy because you're living there, you live in Mexico, you don't want to go after them. No, it's the issue that, like, honestly, the police don't do anything to keep people safe in Mexico, and the cartel actually has a modus operandi to keep citizens safe, because if someone commits a crime, if someone does something to a child, as I've, these are things that have happened here. The cartel goes after them and stops them, because they don't need the news, by the way, around the world losing them a ton of money. Maybe it's not the best reasoning for it, but they don't want the news losing them a bunch of money with, Americans and Canadians and Australians and British people getting killed in Mexico. They don't want that, because it loses them millions and millions and millions of dollars. So of course they have, a prerequisite. The idea is to defend people that are here. And when they go after those cartels, that's when the violence actually starts. It escalates. We saw that in Culiacan. And of course, it'll lead to a wave across the country that will cause violence and instability. And that's exactly what the US and military industrial complex wants. It's what they did in Iraq. And I believe it's what they will do in Mexico and throughout Latin America as a continued effort from what they've been doing for the last, 100 years in this region. So I believe that this is extraordinarily dangerous. I believe that they are overhauling the whole region. And I believe that that overhauling is in favor of a few countries around the world that want to create that digital footprint, because, again, Mexico and places within, not just Southern North America, Central America, and of course, South America, we know these are the countries that have the least likelihood to follow along into the digital ID system, the technocratic system. So therefore, they need to eliminate the power structures within those countries to create their own centralized power structure, to bring in digital IDs, to bring in biometrics, which they're already trying to do in Mexico. They are bringing in biometrics in Mexico that are mandatory by January of next year if you're a resident or citizen. So very dangerous stuff. They are launching a UK digital ID as we speak, not just for mass migration, which this is the excuse that they use. Of course, they create a problem. Like I said, come in with their so-called solution, but also for children. They have internet IDs rolling out across the United States alongside the Genius Act and, of course, Real ID. They have it in Canada, which they're rolling out right now, and including in the most conservative places like Alberta, where they're trying to mandate digital IDs. I mean, my friends, this is happening across the board. In fact, in Canada right now, they're trying to make it so they could ban people who are undesirable from using the internet. Of course, they will claim that it's to stop pedophiles, but the reality, of course, is going to be a lot different than that. That's a Trojan horse. They will use that against anyone that says bad things about the government, and therefore no longer allowed to use the internet. Absolutely insane. They're going for the throat. And Trump is being nominated right now for a Nobel Peace Prize, could win it tomorrow, and yet is committing these acts. U.S. War Department to shift focus from China to threats in Latin America. Trump is threatening to bomb Iran again, but Israel may beat him to it. Here we have, as of this so-called peace deal, Owen Schroyer shared this, IDF tanks near Netzarim City, south of Gaza City, fire shots at civilians trying to move north along the coastal road despite ceasefire. It's horrible stuff. And This is during a ceasefire? Really? Where's the ceasefire? It's like Israel says that they're in a ceasefire with Lebanon, yet repeatedly attack cities in Lebanon. And they say, oh, well, that doesn't go against a ceasefire. We're allowed to fire at Lebanon during the ceasefire. Like, what? And they will continue the propaganda for war in Iran because, of course, it's part of the 7-country plan. It's been in the playbook for a very long time, my friends. Meanwhile, it says out of Zero Hedge, we'd kick Russia's ass. Trump's special envoy to Ukraine says Moscow is losing the war, would collapse without China. Well, first of all, the U.S. propped up China in the first place in 1948, as well as the 1970s under Kissinger, and through the Trilateral Commission up until today, creating a guinea pig state for technocracy. Second, they propped up Russia in the first place, a Bolshevik revolution as well, going through World War II, and again after the fall of the Berlin Wall. And again, they are continuing to arm and fund Ukraine and call for long-range missiles to be shipped through Europe, the European Union to Ukraine via the US. I mean, what happened to the war will be over within 24 hours? What happened to all that? Because it was never going to be the case. It's all to get people to sit on their hands. People will just continuously argue against things that they were for a long time ago, to as like an excuse to keep this going on, keep it moving on, rolling on as it has, as we've seen with this warmongering in the military industrial complex. And again, the end of the militarist age will end with a big bomb, I believe, that will lead to a massive crisis, emergency orders, and the bringing in of the new age, which won't be militarism. You'll think, oh, that's a good thing. It won't be militarism. No, it'll be technocracy. It'll be the complete silencing and censorship of the human being, down to your free will to eat, sleep, and use internet and drink water and have a house. I mean, I have a book right here. My wife actually found it in a store in Canada, COVID-19, The Great Reset. It goes into that. The technocracy that is being rolled out across the board is clear. And if people don't recognize it by now, then go down with the ship then. Do nothing but wait and for the state to save you. We know where this is going. Digital IDs, social credit scores, food rations, of course, grid rations, of course, the restriction of speech, of course, the restriction of use of internet under the guise of stopping cyber warfare and national security threats and all that kind of stuff in 15-minute cities. To me, this is blatantly obvious because it's already being rolled out. And this month, they roll out digital IDs and the digital euro. And across the board, the echoes will happen and it'll move fast. It's down to all of you watching as to what you do next. And as always, I like to wrap these things up by giving people real solutions that aren't asking the government for help. This is how you don't depend on their poisonous food system later on, which will be rationed to you. And yes, it will be. And yes, they already have bills signed for this. They have the United Nations Pact for the Future, which 193 countries signed on to, which allow them to ration food based on social credit and, of course, shut down your bank account if you say negative things about the state. If you go to heavensharvest.com, you'll find long-term storable food that's non-GMO. There's organic kits, heirloom seeds, water filtration and storage, and books on how to get started. Use code WAM, W-A-M, and you'll get 5% off as well as free shipping on these items. Again, this is incredibly important, my friends. Please stock up on this for the sake of yourself and your family going forward. Now, another way is to reject the banking system, which enslaves people to this new digital currency and which can withhold your money from you. I urge people to check out that link in the description for firstnationalbullion.com/schedule-consult/. It has to be that exact link. It's in the description of the video. It's easy to find. And of course, that's on Rumble and BitChute in the description of all of our videos at World Alternative Media. There you could buy physical gold, silver, platinum, or palladium. Avoid the CBDC system. Hold that gold or silver in your hand. Put it in a vault. Put it in an IRA outside of the traditional IRA system. And don't be dependent on their system. Schedule an appointment for a free consultation with Mark Gonzalez and a complimentary investors package. Mark, of course, is a good friend of ours. We do a lot of videos with him. We're about to do one right away with him, but you could check out our video called Dollar Lost 50% of Value recently, or Emergency for Housing Market, or Wall Street Panicked. We have a lot coming up because so much is happening. And I mean, Vietnam just shut down 86 million bank accounts because people didn't submit to the digital ID system. It's getting brutal. Let him know in the comments when you sign up that you found him at World Alternative Media, or WAM, W-A-M. He's awake. He's aware. He's been doing this for a long time. He's trustworthy, and I urge people to go and check that out. Now, finally, if you want to take care of your health, we have a lot of options. Most of them I can't mention in this video because I'm posting this one on YouTube. But of course, Rumble and BitChute, we have a lot of other videos. But I urge people to go and check out vni.life/wham, WAM, for a bunch of super supplements, which are, this is great stuff, especially Protovite, which has 100 plus vitamins, minerals, and phytonutrients. If you use code WAM15, WAM15, you'll get 15% off, and you can you could also go and subscribe and save 20% if you go through our link there in the description of the video. I want to mention what Protovite is. Protovite is amazing at clearing up circulatory issues and helping with immune function. This is a before image of blood scans, and by the way, it's awful, but that's what a lot of your blood looks like right now. And this is 5 minutes after restored negative charge, red blood cells loosely flowing. Of course, circulation has returned. White blood cells are 4 times the size. This is absolutely amazing. Usually takes a month to do. This is happening in 5 minutes of taking this stuff. So I urge people to go and check that out at vni.life/wham, W-A-M. You can check out all of our other links in the description, like Wave Watch code WHAM for 1100 plus frequencies on your wrist. Really cool stuff. And you'll save $100 with code WHAM. But anyway, if you want to help support us, check out those links in the description for gogetfunding.com, Patreon, and Subscribestar. We truly appreciate anything you guys can help us with, especially in these hard times. We are constantly bankrupted, and we are always on the verge of complete shutdown and living on the street. Never mind just shutdown. I've turned down $1 million contracts. I'm okay not being rich. The issue is that I want to be able to sleep at night, and you guys are the only thing that helps keep us up and running, because we cannot depend on anything else to keep us up and running, because obviously we're controversial because we continue to be consistent and tell the truth. But we have gogetfunding.com, Patreon, Subscribestar, on Patreon, Subscribestar, and X at World Alt Media. If you pledge $4.99 a month or more, you'll get exclusive content from us. So we hope you guys go and check that out in the description. We have PayPal address, ancientwonderstelevision@gmail.com. We have a Bitcoin address here that you could scan on the screen or check out in the description in text form. We have our Cointree link with a bunch of different cryptocurrencies that you could donate in, if you please, including privacy coins. And we have our Teespring store with a bunch of merchandise that you can help support us by purchasing. You can find us on Telegram, Band.video, BitChute, Odyssey, Rumble, and Brighteon at World Alternative Media. We're on Hive, Steemit, and Vigilante.tv at Josh Sigurdson. And we're on the Bad Guys TikTok and Instagram at World Alternative Media, Twitter and Getter at World Alt Media, and all the major podcast platforms except for Spotify, where, of course, we are banned. Hit that like button, share on social media, hit the notification bell, and hit subscribe if you have not yet already. And as always, my friends, live freely, live by example. This is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.